At my wife's family barbecue, my wife's sister made a joke: if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice. Everyone laughed, except me. I just raised my hot dog and said, challenge accepted. I moved out that night, cut contact, and vanished. A year later, there. My name's Martin. I was already standing at the edge and considering leaving my marriage long before everything finally fell apart. For a while, I had been living in a marriage that felt more like a slow fade than a shared life. But I knew it was time to go during the family barbecue where I was laughed at. That night, after everyone had left and the house was quiet, I disappeared. My wife, Julie, and I were married for just over 8 years. In the beginning, we were like most couples, deeply connected. We had plans. We didn't just want a house. We wanted a home. That was the dream we signed up for. And for a while, we chased it together. But somewhere around year 5, things started to shift. It wasn't sudden, and that's what made it harder to notice. The turning point came when we started trying for kids. We wanted them badly, both of us. But when months turned to years with no success, we turned to fertility clinics, appointments, injections, tests, and schedules. We tried everything they told us to try. Every month was a new hope, and every month ended with a silent disappointment that filled the room like smoke. I saw what it did to Julie. She became quieter and withdrawn. At first, I thought it was just stress. We were both hurting. But somewhere along the line, she stopped trying altogether. Not just with the treatments, but with me. She gave up on the dream. I think when it became too painful to hold on to, she just let it go completely. And with that, it felt like she let go of our marriage, too. The affection that once came easily faded, and in its place was this cold, polite distance. We still lived in the same house, slept in the same bed, ate at the same table, but it felt like I was living with a stranger, and the silence between us grew heavier every day. What hurt the most was that she didn't seem to notice or care. She had shut down emotionally. I told myself that love meant holding on, even when the other person let go. So, about a year and some months before everything finally broke down between me and Julie, her sister showed up at her door. She had just gone through a nasty split with her husband. I'm talking full-blown shouting matches, cheating allegations, and even police being called to their house a few times. It was a mess, and understandably, she needed a break. Julie came to me asking if her sister could crash with us for a few days, just until she figured things out. Of course, I said yes. It was the decent thing to do. She had 2 little kids who didn't ask for any of this. So, they came in with a few bags and what looked like an overnight plan, but a few days quickly started to stretch. I figured maybe she needed a couple of extra days to sort out her next move. But then those days became a couple of weeks. She didn't talk about finding a job or getting her own place or even going back to the town she left. Her stuff started taking over our guest room. The kids' toys were everywhere, in the living room, kitchen, even our bedroom at times. Their clothes were mixed in with our laundry. Still, I kept quiet. But then a couple of weeks turned into a month. Then 2. Then, before I knew it, we were deep into the 3rd month, and she was still in the house. I had an entire other family living under my roof, and no one seemed to think it was a problem except me. My wife's sister was loud and sarcastic, always had something slick to say, and the kids were full-on chaos. There was no discipline, no respect for space, no sense of control. It was like living inside a daycare run by a drunk circus clown. Every single day was filled with tension. I'd come home from work exhausted, hoping for just a little peace, only to be met with some new mess. Arguments started becoming the norm. There was no conversation anymore, just conflict. And what hurt the most, Julie always took her sister's side. Always. No matter how badly her sister acted, Julie would find a way to defend her. I'd bring up concerns calmly, and she'd shoot me down. She made excuses like, she's my only sister, or, you can't expect me to throw her out just because they did one thing you don't like. To my wife, Julie, my frustration wasn't valid. There was this one time that stuck with me. Her sister was mocking and throwing digs at me. Instead of shutting it down, Julie chimed in with a smirk and said, "Oh, stop. He's sensitive." Then they both laughed. I felt humiliated. It got to a point where I wasn't even sleeping in my own bed. Julie would let her sister and the kids sleep in our bedroom, and I was left to find space wherever I could. Now, I know some people might hear all this and think, why didn't you just leave? And trust me, I asked myself that, too, but it wasn't that simple. See, I believe that a big part of what Julie was going through was the pain from us not being able to have kids. It crushed her. And I thought if we could get through that and find a way forward together, then the love we once had could come back. So, I stayed longer than I should have, believing that our marriage still had a chance. But deep down, I was starting to realize I was getting tired. One day, I had reached that point where love alone wasn't enough to keep me rooted in a house where I felt like a stranger. So, I booked a quiet consultation with a divorce lawyer. Told the lawyer the facts. Weeks after that meeting, the divorce papers were drafted and ready. But I couldn't bring myself to serve them. Not because I thought she'd change, but because some part of me still wanted her to look at me the way she used to, even if just once more. Still, as I waited, the tension didn't reduce. I made a mental to-do list and started checking things off one at a time. The first thing I did was quietly pack some of my essentials, clothes, documents, sentimental items, and store them in old moving boxes. I labeled them vaguely just in case anyone found them. After that, I rented a small storage unit outside of town, paid in cash. It was the kind of place no one would ever think to look. I started slowly moving the boxes there, a few at a time. I opened a new bank account in a different name variation. I bought a new phone. I even picked out a new city, somewhere smaller, quieter. All of this, I planned down to the hour. If my marriage were to end, I was ready to vanish like a ghost. But I didn't pull the trigger because, despite everything, I still loved her. Somewhere deep inside me, under all that hurt and exhaustion, I was still holding on to the woman I married. One Saturday, I went out to clear my head for a few hours. When I pulled back into my driveway, there were more cars than usual lining the street. Laughter echoed from the backyard. I could hear kids yelling and running around before I even opened the front door. I stepped inside and followed the sounds. The backyard was alive. Kids were darting around with juice boxes in hand. Someone was flipping burgers at the grill. The music was low but steady. And everyone looked like they were deep in conversation or cracking jokes. There were drinks on the patio table, paper plates stacked high with food, the whole 9 yards. It was a full-blown family barbecue. The only problem, I didn't know a damn thing about it. I paused at the door, just taking it all in for a second. It was like walking into someone else's party in your own house. I kept my expression neutral. I spotted my wife, Julie, laughing with her parents near the patio table. Before I could say anything, one of Julie's aunts noticed me and waved me over. "Martin, come grab this for me real quick," she called. I nodded and made my way across the yard. I've never had any issues with the extended family. Honestly, I always got along better with some of them than with Julie herself these days. You can click on share and more to see if there is a part 2.